every now and then a movie comes along that the general public despises.
But we're here tonight to tell you why you don't hate this movie.
Alright, so today's movie we're actually going to be talking about is Rocky V. And for the most part, people really didn't like this movie. But there are a lot of things in this movie that people kind of gloss over or really don't recognize, to where, I mean, there's enjoyment to be had in Rocky V, and you really don't hate it. So me and Manny are going to talk about, like, what are the good things about Rocky V and why you really don't hate it. Alright, so I guess going to me first, and because I'm the positive person with Rocky V, because actually I find a lot of value in Rocky V. A lot of value in Rocky V. And some of the things that I actually like about Rocky V, and I guess maybe we can go back and forth, like what I like, what you like.
Well, I mean, I don't hate Rocky V. I like Rocky V a lot. Not a lot, but I like Rocky V in a lot of different ways, you know. There were a few things about it that kind of stood out, but then there were little tiny things that just did not click for me.
Okay.
But I'm curious to know, what is it about this movie? Because you've like been a big advocate for this movie. I'm curious to know, what is it about this movie that you just, you know, you're defending so much?
All right, so with Creed coming out, if you rank the movies, or well, most people, if they actually rank the Rocky movies, everybody's gonna put Rocky V at the bottom, and it's just unwarranted. Because one of the great things that Rocky V brought to us is that, one, they got us out of the stereotypical 80s movies that all the Rocky films were before. I mean, they got us out of, I mean, they didn't get us out of montages, but they got us out of power ballads. They brought us into 90s mullets, which was weird, but it was still a great thing for that movie.
It introduced rap.
It introduced rap into it.
Go for it.
Go for it. Well, go for it. You know, you love it or hate that song. That song was a catchy song for that movie. I mean, it was something that got played on the radio. It wasn't the greatest movie ever. I mean, it wasn't the greatest song ever. But the song was catchy enough, and it did what it was supposed to do. It was supposed to get you emotional in the movie. It was supposed to get you into the thing. Yeah, it was supposed to get you hyped up. And that's what it did. And another thing that the Rocky V movie brought to us is that it showed us more of the boxing promotion. So we got our villain, which was basically a Don King kind of knockoff type person.
And he did a really good job.
I mean, he did a great job. I mean, he's so bad. You know, and I saw Ving Rhames as Don King in that HBO documentary they did for him, or kind of documentary, quasi the biopic that they did for him. And if they hadn't got Ving Rhames, I would have bought that guy as Don King. He did a great job.
Yeah,
so it brought us another look at boxing, because normally with Rocky 1 through 4, it was just kind of like, you know, the odds are against this one guy. You know, he's the underdog. He's gonna go and overcome all these odds. But in a sense, it was just a underdog story in a boxing package. This, in Rocky V, it actually brought us a look at boxing.
So it was more the aspect of the sport.
Yeah, it brought us more about the sport.
More about the sport, okay.
And also too, I think one of the things you had mentioned before when we were talking, that the fighters. So we actually got real fighters. And in Rocky V,
Tommy Morrison.
We got Tommy Morrison, and we also got Michael Williams. And both of these guys were heavyweights at the time, so these were like elite fighters. And we got to see more realism in the fighting. And that was one of the things I think you said that you liked about the movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the realism on the movie. I mean, on the fighting, yes, but also the different part of it was the corruption of boxing. You know, none of them had ever touched on that. So that was an interesting twist to actually showing a different side of boxing, where it was a little bit more about the money and not about the sport itself. You know, and for those of you that've seen it, and I know everybody's seen it, but
some people deny it.
Some people deny it. Yeah, I see that too. But you know, Rocky tells them about what people to stay away from.
Yeah.
He tells them, you know, that he just wants you for this and that and this and that, or he wants you to get to me, you know, and this and that. So he's trying to show Tommy the different side of boxing, the bad side of boxing. And honestly, Mickey never did that in any of the movies. Mickey never showed Rocky anything, and a lot of the good things about it was because Rocky is from the streets. He knows this from the people in the street.
Right.
So even though you got a tie and all this, that doesn't. And the person is still, whatever you know what I'm saying.
Exactly.
So it don't matter what you're wearing. If you know people. And Rocky knows people.
Right.
So that's why he was trying to help Tommy get away from that bad side of the business and all that stuff. And this was the first time that was brought to light.
Right.
So, I dug that aspect of it.
One thing that you mentioned is that with the streets, with Rocky being from the streets. So we actually got to see Rocky go back to what we saw in Rocky 1, where Rocky was on the streets. I mean, he was basically, we got to see the grittiness that we saw in the first one. With Rocky 5, obviously Paulie lost all his money and, him being in and out of hospitals for the brain damage that was going through. So that was another thing too, it gave you a look at like what's the repercussions of actually being a boxer. So this movie brought us a lot of themes that we hadn't had in previous Rocky films. It was like all at once in there, and I almost think the look of Rocky 5 was more realistic than Rocky 1 through 4. So we got to see what happens when a boxer falls from grace. We get to see what happened when they blow through their money, because plenty of boxers blew through their money. And not to say that okay, this was like a realistic look at life as a boxer, but it was more realistic than what we had been getting in Rocky 1 through 4.
Right.
All right. So another thing that you liked about the movie was
The montages.
the montages.
No, okay, I didn't like go for it, no, but I've always dug the montages.
I mean, the montages is what sells Rocky movies.
montage! Sports training montage! I liked it. I liked the montage. It was still, it kept it in the Rocky world. It was just different not to see Rocky doing it, to see him play in the background and having Tommy Gunn do it. But still, just to see him, doing the stuff and getting you ready and getting you pumped for the next show or for the next fight. I mean, that was cool. I thought that was all right.
Oh, so that brings another point where you said like it was cool to see. It was cool to see a montage, but it was weird seeing him not actually in the montage. But we got to see him in the role of Mickey then.
Right. And speaking of, Burgess Meredith came back. So, he was in the dream sequences, flashbacks. And to see Burgess Meredith back, that was kind of nostalgic, in the Rocky world because of how important that role, that character was.
Yeah, that's the most important character.
So so it was, that in that aspect it was good.
Mickey loves you.
Mickey, get up, because Mickey. I have to agree with some of the majority, though.
Okay.
On some.
So we can mention a little bit of that.
On some of the things, the biggest thing for me was the fact that it was just trying so hard to be Rocky 1.
Okay.
I mean, it tried too hard to be Rocky 1. Now, we had talked previously during prep, and he was telling me, and he made sense, but I was saying that Rocky has grown as a fighter.
Okay.
In 2, 3, and 4, he had grown as a fighter. He'd grown as a human being from being with Apollo and all this, and then going through that freaking emotional, roller coaster after Apollo's death. He was accomplished, and I don't believe that anybody that was suffering from brain damage could be as coherent as he was in that fight, that exit fight interview at the end when he makes it, if I could change, you could change. I just don't see it. So in that split second, that now he's talking like this and all this other, I just don't buy it. And why is it that Tommy Gunn talks about his fight with Apollo Creed, but nobody mentions Drago, and that was just in the papers not too long ago in that universe.
Oh.
And Apollo just died. Nobody even, nothing. It just didn't make any sense.
Well, first and foremost, we're not saying that the movie was perfect. I don't think anybody's ever said that the movie was perfect.
Pleasure.
It definitely had
its guilty pleasure.
It definitely is a guilty pleasure, and it definitely had its flaws. I mean, but obviously the thing with this movie is that you really don't hate it. There's a lot of things that were redeeming factors with it. Like you said that, okay, it didn't mention... It didn't reference any of the other previous movies. But the whole thing about this particular movie is that they were trying to set up an ending for Rocky.
Right.
The original script was what...
Rocky died.
Yeah, Rocky was supposed to die, but Sylvester Stallone changed his mind at the end. And would you have rather seen Rocky die? No.
Sylvester Stallone changed his mind.
Or maybe the
studio head. There you go.
The studio said, hey,
come on.
Rocky needs to Rocky number 6.
Rocky needs to fight Jason.
But
Voorhees.
But the simple fact is that the reason why the reason why that stuff was changed is because they know the appeal and the love that people have for Rocky, and that's one of the things that was shown in this movie is that even though Rocky wasn't fighting, we still love Rocky and who he was, what he brings, the themes that the what's the word I'm looking for, but the values that Rocky brought is that he was always going to be honest. He was always going to fight the hardest. He was always never going to give up. And that was one of the things that was shown in this movie, and it carried over, and it brought you through this movie. And it was like, even though I'm not a fighter, I'm going to bring that onto you, Tommy Gunn, and I'm going to help you become a better fighter.
Right.
And Tommy Gunn did a great job in his limited capacity in the role, but I mean, the movie was about Rocky, and that's why it was great.
Well, Rocky's transition from like you said, fall from grace, and trying to transition himself into civilian life, and the difference was the challenges for him this time was he had his wife and his teenager son.
Sly! I mean, Stallone's son, Sage was in it. Come on, you gotta give him credit for that. That was a good thing to see.
I give him credit to see it. At least it wasn't the kid from Over the Top.
There you go.
But anyway, so in that aspect, I mean, it was interesting to see that because he had always been alone, and he even says it in Rocky IV when he talks about when I get busted up, I didn't care. Now there's you, there's the kid, and all this other stuff.
Right.
So now now it really happens. Now it really happens, and he's got to be in Philadelphia in this rough part of town. Which I can't believe Adrian didn't save no money in her bank account, but that's just me.
I mean, man.
Why are you just depending on Rocky?
Sometimes people just like, you got it, babe, I got it.
So, but from that, I mean, it was interesting, the concept and everything. Just some of the delivery was kind of shaky. The fight was awesome. And
okay, so that's what we're talk about is that final fight.
Yeah, the final fight. I mean, you look and for you PS3, PS4, PS2 players out there, actually. For you, PS2. I'm getting somewhere.
All right, okay.
The Rocky video game, PS2, it goes on and and some
of
the
a
other
Rocky video game?
Yes, it was actually pretty freaking good. And surprisingly enough, Apollo was the toughest fighter.
Of course.
He was the toughest fighter, and he was actually the best fighter. But that's another story for another day.
Okay.
But when you get to but they even have it in the video game where he fights Tommy Gunn, and it was pretty cool. So I mean, I liked the fight at the end.
Okay.
I liked the essence of the city above him as the train passes and the Rocky music comes down when he gets up. I thought that was freaking awesome. Just to have the freaking gun fly now anywhere, I don't care. I just want to hear it. Spoiler, it's on the freaking Creed.
Oh.
But yeah, so it's not the worst. Well, okay, so it's not the worst movie.
No.
It might be the worst Rocky, but it's not the worst movie.
It's not the worst movie, and I don't think that, even though it may be when we rank the Rockies, it may be towards the bottom. But the point is that
it is towards the bottom because Creed is definitely higher than that.
Okay, well, Creed's higher than that, and then maybe Rocky 3 and 4, and Rocky 1.
No, number
Rocky
1. Part 3 is the number 1 Rocky for me. Part 4 is number 2.
Okay.
Part 1 is number 3.
All right.
Rocky Balboa would be number 4. Rocky 2, and then.
Okay.
And then Rocky 5, and then Rocky. Oh, I did put Creed in there. It doesn't matter. Okay. You know what I'm saying.
So it's 7th in Rocky films. It's 7th in Rocky films. So I mean, you could look at it that way. You don't have to say last place. You could just say 7th. 7th.
We're interested in hearing your comments on this. Okay?
Yeah, definitely. So
definitely, please, if you like this movie. Give me the thumbs up. Give us a thumbs up on it. If you hate it, give us those too. We really love to hear from you.
Please tell us why you like this movie. I want to see that in the comments. Why you like this movie.
But the fact that the words guilty and pleasure are in this, you don't really hate this movie. I'm Manny.
That's Terrence.
See you next time.